through my cancer, and I was on a lot of side effect medications. I remember 20 different types of papers, and I combed over every side effect, and I saw just some really hair-raising side effects that really scared me. But I need to find a way to naturally do this as much as possible. So what did you think when I first brought up essential oils?
Well, you take a breath as the doc, and you try and think, what is this patient trying to do? What is the goal here? And you try and put yourself in the patient's place and say, what am I not getting for them? What am I not doing for them that they need? And it was pretty clear at that point you were trying to approach your cancer holistically in a healthy, natural fashion. So I had to learn about it. I had to study this stuff myself and understand that what you're talking about is the judicious application of naturally occurring substances to try and make sure that you give your body the best chance to bounce back.
Hear as much science as possible. I literally felt like I had a degree by the time I produced all this information, because I knew it was something that you needed, that this was something that could benefit patients and just help patients bridge the gap on their emotions while they're going through treatment.
We've built a lot of that into our own practice even before now, where people have distress tools and a social worker is involved early. We have a nutrition expert who can come by and talk about the appropriate way to feed yourself on chemo. And as we talk about this new cancer center we're building, we're putting in a demonstration teaching kitchen to teach people how to rebuild their systems after we've beaten them up. And I think what we're learning is these are viable tools. And the fact that they haven't been adequately studied yet should just be motivation to study them.
What are you looking forward to the most with this new integrative cancer center?
I love that for once I get to spend some time building people up. You can imagine as a cancer doctor, we're aware of what we do and the blunt instruments that I use to fight cancers. And I know that I have to kill an awful lot of good cells to get to the bad cells. I'm looking forward to them receiving treatments that aren't just destructive and that might have the impact of rescuing them at their lows.
So I'm looking forward to locking arms with not only the doctors and the nurses on staff, but also the patients.
We're really excited to have this partnership moving forward. We're really excited to announce that we're forming the doTERRA Center for Integrative Oncology.
Please welcome to the stage St. Elizabeth Healthcare Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Doug Flora.
That's a great video. I want to take a second before I get started and introduce myself and why I'm here in front of you to point out that was one of your advocates on that video. And about a year ago, we started this journey together as patient and doctor. Nicole Chase is one of your platinum advocates. Yeah, we should applaud her. So I'm going to talk equally about some of the medical stuff and what we're hoping to do as a growing partnership between doTERRA and our healthcare system. But I'm also going to talk about the power of one and what one of you did when she was brave for about 20 seconds and hopefully inspire you to understand the difference that you can make. I think our keynote speaker today was fantastic for setting the stage for what I'm about to talk about. I really didn't know what I was getting into when Dr. Otzgathorpe and Brannick talked me into coming here. You people are nuts, but you smell really great. I think after watching that video, we're very clear on one thing as a group, that the camera adds 10 pounds, right? All right, so I've got a time limit here. They're timing me. So I'm going to talk today about how we hope to elevate the care of cancer patients across my region and eventually across the country by reframing the way that we talk about caring for cancer patients universally. Obviously, this is a friendly crowd for approaches to holistic and complementary and alternative medicines. I'm a big fan of those. I'm a big fan of using traditional medicines as well. And what we want to do and what we're working very closely with Russ and his team is to make sure we approach these things as scientifically as we can and approach this with the same academic rigor that we would medications as well, to make sure that we're not causing harm in the things that we're doing. And so it's very, very important. And I credit your team. Yeah. So what you may be realizing is how unusual that is. And that's because of all of you out here. The scale of doTERRA has now allowed your leadership team and your owners to spend an awful lot of money doing something that most other companies don't invest in, right? And I know if you're out there, you see the skeptics. I was and am sort of still one until we have strong data on dosing. And the pharmacokinetic stuff you just saw, I nerd out with that stuff. I think it's fantastic. It will come to you guys in a fashion that will make a lot more sense later on. But this is groundbreaking stuff that you're doing here that other companies have not invested in. And so I credit your scientific team. Yeah. From my perspective, what we're trying to do is change the conversation about cancer from the traditional CT scan-based, chemotherapy-based, toxicity-based, what's the matter with you, to something more like what matters the most to you. And we share that vision with Russ and his medical team. Yeah, that's important, right? We forget that sometimes, and I want you to understand the doctors who care for you care about these things too, but the constraints of time and the pressures and our requirements in our contract with our patients to really provide the most evidence-based medicine doesn't mean that we don't care about the other part, but it means we have a responsibility to you to make sure that we keep you safe first. And part of the research and the scientific studies that Russ and his team are putting together to try and answer some of those questions so that your doctors can feel more comfortable and less skeptical. The second part of this, I'm going to talk about your own advocate and the power of involvement and bravery, and how she was so bold that she brought this partnership together and encouraged the 35,000 odd people here today to think, what can you do in your own communities? Let's move on to another slide. So unfortunately, who is Doug Flora and why is he on stage at this convention? Russ already covered, so I don't really have anything else to talk about. Are there any questions? Thank you for your time. Be safe getting home. No. I want to start with my why. Okay, I want to talk about how I came to be here. I'm a cancer patient myself, and I don't know if I've made that clear before. I had a kidney cancer diagnosed October 17, 2017. I went through surgery. I went through all the fear and terror that my patients feel every day. I'm also a practicing oncologist that sees patients in the clinic and understands now from a different perspective dread and fear and anxiety and insomnia. And those are some of the things that we hope these products may ultimately prove to help with. We don't talk about side effect management. We don't talk about things until they're studied. But the goal here in this relationship is to see if we can use your tools to improve patients' qualities of life. So this is where our story starts. It'll be a long story. This is a long-term relationship, and I'm sure I'll be back to give you updates as this goes on. But the short story, as how I came here, is that we announced on my Facebook page and our St. Elizabeth Healthcare page that we were building this $130 million cancer center, and that we were trying to build this around the patient experience rather than around the providers. And that's a novel approach, as you can imagine. Cancer doctors are busy, and the schedules generally are built to our convenience and not the care of the patients. And we've decided to flip that switch, and we're going to do it a little different in our building. Well, Nicole Chase, your advocate, saw that post and reached out to me with this actual text. And you can't read it, but basically it says, hey, what's up? Long time no see. I want to tell you what I do, and I want you to hear about our products, and I wondered if there might be a role for essential oils at St. Elizabeth Healthcare in your new cancer center. And that was about the same time I was asking my own team, how can we take the best possible care of the patient and not just their tumors? And it was a perfect timing because at that point I really wanted to build something that was different and novel, but I needed help. This is a big project where I live, and I'll show you why. Okay, so I don't want you to think I'm a neophyte. I'm a long-time oil user, but I used to pour it on my fan, which I'm told now isn't cool. I didn't know. Apparently it isn't cool. So when I met Nicole came in and shared with me a lot of the scientific literature that she had uncovered. She did a ton of research about this and understood that in our area, we're the lowest, worst tier for cancer patients in the country. Kentucky leads the nation in cancer diagnoses and cancer deaths. We're worst in the country for lung cancer, stage 4 lung cancer deaths, stage 4 colon cancer deaths, and it's really desperate. There's a very high degree of smoking. There's a lot of health literacy issues, and we have a very poor population, and they don't get screened the way they should, and so we're working on that. Interestingly and ironically, Utah, where we now stand, is the best place in the country to have cancer at the lowest possible rate because people here exercise. And obesity is linked to 12 or 13 different cancers. People eat well, and we know food is medicine. People don't smoke and they don't drink. And that's vastly different from where I come from, which is bourbon country, which is one of the best things about Kentucky, but I'll be careful how much I get into that. So anyway, Nicole enters stage left. She comes to my office with reams and reams and reams of paper, and she says, I know you care about this stuff because you took care of me and you cared about the whole person. How can we use what I know and what you know to get together? And so that's where that text originated. She replaced that fan with my first kit. It's now diffusing, so I have lemon and breathe and calm and yes. Still lots of lavender. But she taught me about this stuff, and so that evolved from a skeptic to a convert, right? So here, this is a braggy text I sent my wife as if to say, look at me, I'm a big boy, I'm exercising even though you didn't make me today. I don't know if you ever got a text like that from your spouse, but I don't do great at exercising without her forcing me to. And I got home from a 6-mile run and I was dying. I'm way too heavy, way too old to be doing that at my age. I should be walking 1 mile. And so I got home and Nicole's bottle of Deep Blue Rub was sitting on my counter, and I thought, that seems like that would work well. I hurt everywhere and this seems like it might help. So I used the whole tube. Yeah. Choose your advocates wisely, because a good advocate would have warned me that there's an appropriate dose and there's a non-appropriate dose. Yeah. So that's me in the middle. That night I lied under the covers for about 45 minutes, just skin simmering and thinking that was a really, really good burn. So lesson number 1, do not use a whole tube. Tell that to your people. And I'm sure Russ is studying that dosing strategy right now. So moving forward a few months, and this speaks briefly to the tenacity and the ferocity of Nicole. She's a force of nature. She knew at that point I didn't have the funding to build the things that I wanted to build. She decided on her own volition to go to Puerto Vallarta to one of your conferences and stalk leadership. So she did. She was at a sandcastle contest, working her tail off, carrying water from the ocean to the castle, and cornered Brannick for what I can only imagine was a very startling experience for him. And I think at the end of the discussion, he said he was either going to take a meeting with me to hear more about this, or he was going to get a restraining order against Nicole. We're glad he went with the first, and then we established contact, and that's where this relationship really started to accelerate a bit. Nicole chased them, yeah, right. Nicole chased more people down at leadership in February, and there seemed to be a growing momentum for, let's have an actual meeting. And eventually we had a telephone conference with myself and Russ and Brannick, and I heard later that Mr. Sterling was brought in without my knowing, and they liked the idea, and I guess the word was go out and meet this guy and see if he's legit. So they came to Kentucky. We had tons of bourbon together. No, I'm just kidding. In fact, Russ claims to be a vegan, and he ordered every piece of meat that was on the menu at the restaurant that night, so vegan. So this is our cancer center in April. This is where we stood. As he mentioned, it's a 250,000 square foot facility, 6 floors. But what's important to this group probably is the first floor, which is now going to be called the doTERRA Center for Integrative Oncology. Right. So this is a big deal because there aren't places like this. And in this building, your signage will be everywhere. There will be acupuncture and aromatherapy and aroma touch and medical massage and mindful meditation. Yep. I will be working out in a yoga studio for the first time in my life. It's not a pretty sight, right? We have a demonstration teaching kitchen to teach people about food being medicine and how to eat healthily to affect their health both before and during and after their chemotherapies. And maybe most importantly for me, as we try to chase this treating the whole person, not just the tumor, I had funding to hire our first ever director of integrative oncology, and she's fantastic. So moving on a little bit, I'm going to try and stay on schedule. The video that you just watched was filmed a couple weeks ago. And Nicole advised me it was exactly 1 year to the day from when she took me off her chicken list. That's what she calls the list of people she is afraid to call. Do you all have one of those? That's cool. I've never heard that. I'm scared to call everyone. She was brave enough to do it, and she said it was a really big deal for her because I was her treating cancer doctor, and she was encouraging maybe a not traditional route for our cancer center. And she said she actually sent that text that you saw and then threw her phone across the room as if she was going to be able to take it back, which obviously that didn't work. I think it's crazy that we're a year into this now, and we've got a formal 10-year relationship now with doTERRA as we work through these clinical trials, as we work through this center. We're honored for this, and I think for you all, what may be important is that they're challenging the old paradigms of traditional medicine with Prime Meridian by studying the use of essential oils with real scientific rigor, and we're excited to participate in that. As we open this center and we move this process forward, the thing that struck me was that this was the power of one single individual in this room last year, right? That's awesome. So she decided there was a need. There was a problem that needed solved in her community. She recognized that there was an opportunity, and she did bold things, and she was brave. And I would encourage those of you who are in your own communities and your own businesses to look outside of what's typically done and try and stretch that and try and say, what makes me uncomfortable? That's probably the right thing to do. We've already established it's super great and highly encouraged to stalk your leadership at conferences. Emily over there, they're loving that part, right? They're less likely to do restraining orders after this experience. We know now that fans are not diffusers, so we've learned a lot about that. We now know the appropriate dose of Deep Blue Rub is not 1. LOL. And we now know that there's going to be a doTERRA Center for Integrative Oncology in Kentucky at Ground Zero for Cancer. So as I approach my close, I'd like to ask for a minute of indulgence. I'm going to play a 46-second video about this that I think resonates well. This is a message that my children receive at home. It's something that I really believe in. I think it might leave you with an idea where we are right now.
What happened with you and Lily?
I guess I didn't listen to something she told me or something. I mean, I liked her. It's like you embarrass yourself if you say something. And you embarrass yourself if you don't.
You know, sometimes all you need is 20 seconds of insane courage. Just literally 20 seconds of just embarrassing bravery. And I promise you, something great will come of it.
Right? How much cooler would I have been in high school if I knew that rule? So I thank you for your time. I thank you for your energy. I'm excited to be here and see the spectacle that is this conference. I'm excited for our partnership, and I want to reach out and thank Brannick and Russ for inviting me into their lives as now good friends as we've spent many, many months working through this. And I look forward to coming back in future years and telling you all the good that we've done for these patients. Thank you.